Hello, friends, and welcome to Monday's edition of the Kings of Anglia podcast. It's a very happy Monday because Kieran McKenna's reign as Ipswich Town manager continues to go really well, start really well. Couldn't have really gone better thus far. They absolutely thumped Gillingham 4-0 on Saturday. The game was pretty much over by half time. And that is a note on which we start our Monday pod today. Hope you all had a good weekend. The four Kings are here today. Obviously, Mr. Bacon's still a long-term absentee. Stewie just throwing his computer across the desk, if you're hearing that on the audio. I'm your host, Mark Heath. I already touched on it. Stuart Watson is also here. The doctor. Stewie, what are you doing?
I was just trying to use my machine and knocked it. Is that all right?
Just a reminder, if you are going to start typing, maybe hit mute because it does come across on the audio. But you're with us. Hutchie, how are you, my friend? Mr. Andy Warren?
I'm with us, yeah. I love how Stu calls his laptop his machine. Always has, always will. And I like it. Don't stop. Mike Bacon does it too.
His machine, outstanding. And Roscoe, what do you call your laptop? Have you got a nickname for it?
No, it's just there to use when I need it. Although I thought I broke it in Gillingham because it was very wet. I've finally dried off and I thought it was broken because it wouldn't come on. So yeah, I was a bit concerned. I was about to message the boy, said I may need to borrow your laptop when you finish your work because mine won't come on, but it did come on eventually.
So you were calling it some sort of names, I'd imagine, at Gillingham.
Yes,
you bastard, that sort of thing.
Pretty much.
Imagine.
Yeah.
Boys, obviously, I've already said Town had a great weekend. You've all had a great weekend, I'm sure, as a result, because Ipswich Town absolutely smashed Gillingham 4-0 in one of the finest showings in recent times on Saturday. And before we get into all that, and obviously we're going to break that down in some depth, there is something we need to touch on before we get going. Something that's sparked roughly as much debate as Novak Djokovic trying to get into Australia. And that is Hutchie's rascal footwear that he sported on Saturday. Stuart Watson, you're the man responsible for sharing this with the masses, bringing it to the wider consciousness. If you could just set up Hutchie's fantastic pair of sneakers.
Yeah, well, listeners probably don't know, but Andy's got a bit of a trainer fetish that's been growing over, I would say, steadily over the last 6 to 12 months. I think it would be fair to say Andy's got a bit of an addiction to ordering new trainers online. He will quite often turn up on when we convene for our journeys to away games. He'll turn up with a new pair of trainers. We jumped out of the car, sort of road parked at Priestfield on Saturday, jumped out the car and I looked down and I said, what are those? Immediately saw them. If you haven't seen the post on social media, they're brown trainers, but with a sort of a pink tongue and some light blue laces. Here we are. They're appearing on Andy's screen now for those that are watching. It was my most interacted on post of the day. On a day that Ipswich won 4-0, I think we got about 4 or 5 comments on the full-time tweet, 132 on Andy's trainers. So I'll leave others to discuss the fashion merits of said trainers.
But I mean, where do you stand on them? Because you obviously moved enough to take a picture of them and share it, Stewie. So is that because you're a fan or because you're not a fan?
I don't know if I could pull them off, but I admire Andy going for it. Just sort of, he said, "I've got to keep myself young." Was Andy's reasoning. I'll let the man talk through his own decision.
I mean, Hutchie, that's a really polite way of Stu saying he hates them. Before we get into that, can you just show them again, just so that people can see them? These are without any sort of advertising. These are a brand that rhymes with Heike. There we go. What's the actual stats on those? What they called? They're dunks.
No, Nike SB Blazer mids.
Okay, and because on the picture they look grey with a very bright pink tongue, but they're brown, are they?
They're brown. Yeah.
Okay.
Like basketball brown.
Yeah.
Colour.
Fair to say that there was a lot of jealousy in those comments.
Overwhelmingly positive. The comments. Just positive after positive, rolling in.
I mean, I saw people actually posting gifs of people vomiting and things like that, which I thought was a bit harsh.
Wow. I don't really care, to be quite honest. I like them. You're not going to stop me. I like them. So
I've got to say, Hutchie, I like them too. I'm here.
I thought you would.
And
I thought you would.
The thing I liked about it most is you wore them perfectly. They're a statement bit of footwear. So everything else you were wearing was black, apart from these outrageously bright trainers, and that's the way you should do it, sartorially speaking. Rossi, you're the group's youngster. You're down with the kids and that. What did you make of them?
I liked them. I
Yeah,
think Andy wore them very well. He walked the walk, and I like them. Although they're not Adidas, so yeah.
You're not contractually obliged to. You're not allowed to talk about them, look at them, anything, because you're dressed head to toe in Adidas every week.
Although I've got Puma on today, so other brands are available, of course.
That's that's Adidas's deadly enemy. That's his brother's brand when they split.
that's
I
also
just like this. It's comfy.
It's also the most Suffolk pronunciation of Puma I've ever heard. Want to get yourself some Puma, boy. Hutchie, I think one of the members of the KOA Army, Mullet, one of my fighting friends, I like him, pointed out, because you said you've also worn them against Wickham, didn't you? So now they're officially your lucky kicks and have to be worn at all times for town games. You happy with that?
I can take that. Yeah, you wait till everyone sees my Monsters Inc. trainers that I've got.
Oh,
that's going to send the people wild. But yeah, I can do that if you want. If that's my contribution to this push for getting back into the promotion race, then I'm happy to do that. It's no hardship for me.
I like it, and I didn't realise. So Hutchie, kits, a particular passion. We can see behind you. You've got a kit of the day. We'll maybe get on to a bit later. Trainers. I never realised you're that big into trainers, but you are, which is fantastic. So there you go. There were some people suggesting that you may have been sporting them as some sort of early midlife crisis after my comments about you being dull, which obviously you're not. But clearly not. You just like trainers. You like bright colours.
Yeah. I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy on. I've not got like. I'm not like Grant Ward. I've not got hundreds and hundreds. I've probably got about 8 pairs of trainers.
What would be your dream pair? Have you got a dream pair, a target pair that you want?
Yes, but I can't remember what they're called. I only saw them for the first time. I basically, this has egged me on. If anything, this whole scenario has just egged me on further. So I do have a new target pair. We'll see if I can raise the capital.
Excellent.
To get them done.
Maybe a GoFundMe page, friends, to fund Hutchie's extravagant sneaker habit.
Do not send me. do not send me money to buy trainers. There are people starving in the world. Don't do that.
All right, then. That's enough trainer chat. Roscoe said there he walked the walk, and Ipswich Town talked the talk on Saturday, boys. And it took them less than half an hour really to do their talking with their feet. I've previously said that Kieran McKenna might be a bit dull, but if this is the way Ipswich Town are going to perform, I don't care if he collects fungus and has a list of his favourite moulds. Play on, I say, because Kieran McKenna's Ipswich Town, they play some sexy football, boys. Stuart Watson, what a performance on Saturday. Your thoughts, please.
Yeah, you said the game was over at half time. The game was over after 23 minutes, which is when Ipswich Town had gone 3-0 up. The most complete performance I've seen from Ipswich Town for some time. We've seen in spells what these group of players are capable of. We knew they'd put together really what on paper should be a talented squad. And at times we've seen it with the 4 goals at Portsmouth and Wickham, the 6-0 against Doncaster. But what I liked most about this is that there was a consistency from the first half to the second. They married the very, very good pass and move, slick football, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit more depth in a moment, with the gritty stuff as well. Gillingham, yes, they are in a real funk at the moment. I think that's 12 without a win now. Steve Evans has been sacked off the back of it. They've had COVID and injury problems, of course, but the way that Ipswich took them apart and the way that Ipswich dealt with some of the long ball stuff and long throws and everything, very, very good. Very good performance.
Hutchie, you were watching your fancy sneakers on. Were you kept warm by the performance?
Yeah, loved it. Pure dominance, almost from start to finish. Certainly in half an hour. But the thing that I like the most is, I said this in our post-match video that we did. How many times on this podcast have we sat here and said Paul Cook's got a full week of training with these players? that can't wait to see what they produce. Paul Lambert's got it's an international break. It does mean 2 weeks on the training field. That's great. They can get it together, and you wait till they come out after this international break, and it just never happened with any of those two managers. Those breaks never happen. Obviously, a bit of a delay for McKenna's second game here due to COVID, and they've used that time so well. You could just see it in front of your eyes. They played well against Wickham. They were organised and well prepared for that game. But this time it was a different team. They were so well prepared for what was to come from Gillingham, but more importantly, they were well prepared for what they were going to produce themselves. Passing, moving, tackling. Everyone knew their role. It was really well organised, but also they had the ability to play off the cuff in certain areas of the pitch as well, and they enjoyed themselves. It was brilliant.
Rossi, did you enjoy yourself pitch side? How wet did you get, first of all, pitch side? Because obviously Gillingham famously open to the elements, particularly that away end. Ridiculous, by the way.
It wasn't as bad as forecast. It got to the 80th minute, and then it decided to absolutely hammer it down. And I thought, I just got away with it, just about. But no, it got very wet. But no, I think A1 ignored the weather, because we saw sexy football, 4 goals, happy day in Kent. And I was proven wrong, because I thought this was going to be a grind, a 1-0 win for Town. But I was very much surprised in the first opening 30 minutes, thinking, wow, this is sexy football. Kieran McKenna, I love you.
Yes, Stewie. Let's get into the game then, shall we? Kieran McKenna's second game as Ipswich Town manager. Fantastic start. Stuck with the 3-4-3. Did you see anything different? Obviously, apart from the result, what did you see different from this game to the Wickham game?
Yeah, same outfield 10. Obviously, Walton for Hadkey was the only change to the game, but those outfield 10 played the game subtly, differently. The front three were set up in a slightly different way to the Wickham game. As Andy mentioned, Wickham was an organised, structured performance in which they had to sort of battle out that 1-0 against obviously a better team in Wickham. And for that to happen, James Norwood and Sonny Aluko played very much as wide men, really, in support of Bond, but they kind of slipped in and did their defensive work. This was a bit more fluid in terms of the front three. Norwood played a bit more centrally. Bond, instead of kind of playing right on the last shoulder and getting caught offside quite a lot, he dropped into pockets of space. Aluko was back to being that sort of floaty number 10 that we saw in the Sunderland game previously. And Gillingham just didn't really know who to pick up where, because there was not just in the front three as well, but there was a fluidity about the whole team. You know, the members of the back three can step forward when required. We saw Donasian involved in one of the moves for the goals. Edmondson can bring the ball out from the back. Morsey, at times he's picking it up off the back four, but at other times he's right up there supporting the attack. And it just creates that bit of unpredictability about the team, which under Paul Cook, I think teams had started to work out, what you're going to get with a Paul Cook 4-2-3-1. You knew exactly what everyone was going to do at various different times. It's still organised, it's still structured, but there's enough to kind of keep the opposition second guessing all the time. That's what I've liked about McKenna football so far.
Hutchie, I mean, right from the very first press conference, we said adaptability, fluidity, being like water is kind of what McKenna wants from his side. And this is a pretty good example of it, wasn't it? I mean, the goals themselves were things of beauty by and large.
That's what I like. That's what I'm encouraged by the most with McKenna is the adaptability. You can tell he was incredibly well prepared for this game. He was already talking about the Bolton game in his post-match press conference from this game about how the challenge is going to be different there, and that the hint was that tweaks will be required. So it's nice. I enjoy it. I think we're going to be having these discussions quite a lot on these podcasts now about what changed and what the kind of the variations were within games. They're not going to work every single time, of course they're not. But this game was just an example of being incredibly well prepared and executing a game plan perfectly. Although he's a perfectionist he was talking about being unhappy with the final 15 minutes of the first half. There was a slight drop off there, but I'll be honest, it got to half time and I wasn't sitting there thinking that they're letting this slip, because they were still well on top. But for him, and he says for the players as well, Wes Burns I spoke to afterwards certainly agreed they weren't happy with how they finished that first half. So they'll be really happy with how they came out and managed the game in the second, because it was never in doubt.
That's for me. I mean, obviously, Kieran McKenna is only 35 years old. He's very much a young, progressive, new, exciting approach type of coach. And the way he was talking about, essentially, they expected that sort of game because Gillingham like to go man for man, so there's going to be space, that kind of thing. That's kind of stuff that we've never really heard before from an Ipswich Town manager. That's kind of next level kind of stuff. And I wonder if, yes, we've done the old tried and tested kind of old fashioned, old style managers, but one gets the sense with McKenna, he's kind of almost seeing it as a different game kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? It seems to me like I think entirely.
I would say the other managers they will have talked about this stuff. It's not that, but to verbalise it and kind of share their thinking with supporters is interesting, because supporters can see these things in games, probably not to the depth that McKenna and the coaching staff do, but like, we can see what's going on the pitch, and it's just really nice to have a manager willing to talk about it. If you're that confident in what you're going to do, it's not. I don't think he's the type that's going to feel like he has to be super kind of secretive about it to avoid sharing the secrets, because if you just do it well and talk about it after the game, then it's too late. You've beaten them 4-0.
I've never really understood this kind of almost like you can't give away trade secrets in post-match press conference, or like, I can't go into any level of detail because you won't understand. I remember, I think Paul Jewell once sort of said, "Oh, I'd explain it to you, but you wouldn't understand," sort of thing. And forget the fact that you're speaking to a journalist. Sometimes this is your platform to speak to the wider fan base. And I've always said, make them feel part of it. Bring them on your journey with them. Show them you're working, because that's all people want. And we appreciate you can't always tell people if your star signing, your star player is injured, you're going to keep that quiet. But there are other times, just if there's some long-term injuries, what was the problem with telling people where John Nolan's progress was at, for example, with Paul Cook? The reluctance from Paul Cook to even talk about injuries kind of summed up his sort of reticence to hold things back. And you don't need, look, coach, manager, if you're not giving anything away, you might not think that we can't see certain things, but your opposite manager's going to watch back your game and they're going to have seen everything anyway. So it's just really refreshing for him to just show his workings a little bit more and be willing to talk about things a little bit more. I've enjoyed that so far. Hopefully it will continue.
On a peek behind the curtain tip, Stewie, no one who listens to this show will have the chance to speak to Kieran McKenna at all, really. But you speak to him after every game. What is he like? It's to me, because obviously I've joked about him being a bit kind of dull and understated. But what is he actually like when you speak to him after a game? Is he kind of straight line, Hutchie classic, not too high, not too low? Is very much his demeanour? What's he like?
We haven't had loads of time with him thus far, because half of it's obviously been done via Zoom, which I just think you don't ever really get a chance to really get a feel for somebody's persona down a computer lens. Post match, he's certainly been generous with his time. After the Wickham game, after he'd sort of patiently gone through all his various media duties with television and radio and press, he kind of loitered for a little bit afterwards and was willing to talk in a little bit more depth about how his centre halves had played that day against Wickham, and just give even a bit more insight into that off the record. And then in the Gillingham game, we kind of, with the weather being what it was, we kind of hunkered down in a free director's box, commercial box, and again, just a very casual sort of round table discussion in which you never felt like anything was off limits, or it was just very polite, very patient, very meticulous is a word we've heard a lot about Kieran McKenna when he got appointed, and you can just tell that he thinks about everything, even his answers to all the questions. There's a little pause, collects his thoughts, and then answers. And very considered is the way I would describe him.
Refreshing stuff. Also refreshing stuff, obviously. Rossi, you were getting refreshed by the rain on the touchline. You have a different view to the boys. Have you seen anything different in the 2 games so far in terms of maybe the way the players are communicating, moving? Anything new you've seen?
Exactly that, pretty much. And I feel there's just a new case of confidence. I just feel like players feel and just more comfortable on the ball, and just as you said, they're just refreshing seeing them playing the way they are, and that's just good to see. I think they were lacking confidence. I think after, definitely the Charlton game, that was, dearie me. Let's not talk about that again. But from that to Saturday, it was just a complete whole different look at the team. Some players like Macaulay Bomb, him back scoring again, which is great to see. He looks like a new player. Even Matt Penny, who is, some people would say he was the weak link in this side, but he improved. Luke Wolfenden, once again, a video me and Andy did and a piece he did, players who would thrive under McKenna. He is one of those. So, yeah, a lot of confidence going into this team, which is good to see.
We should also talk, you're privileged to be in a position where the players are celebrating in front of you. And obviously, we no longer share those videos on social media because of the shadowy EFL figures want to spoil our fun and shut down our account, things like that. But after the goals, there was some quite interesting celebrations, weren't there?
Yeah, so the first one was Macaulay Bon, who's going, "This is my club," because he was celebrating right in front of the Gillingham fans. And he was going, "Yeah, this is my club," slapping the badge. Of course, James Norwood on top of him, celebrating with him. And then, of course, after they sort of then clapped hands with the other players, of course, James Norwood did his standards, likes to bait the Gillingham fans or any other opposite fans. He said, "Unlucky." He said that about twice, and he did the chin thing because they were saying some naughty words. So I had to, before I uploaded it for game day, I had to cut out a bit of the one of his unluckies because someone said a very naughty word. I don't think that should be aired on game day. But no, it's great when they celebrate and they say different things. It's sort of nice little insight for me. And of course, it's great that if they celebrate my way and Warren Page, the photographer's way, because we get the best sort of footage and pictures. So yeah, it was good. And as I said, the rain sort of was forgotten about because we were playing well and celebrations came our way.
It's just a shame those goals didn't come at the other end in the first half. That would have been. I know the away end obviously got Connor Chaplin's late penalty, but if those 3 goals in 23 minutes had gone in front of the away fans, Macaulay Bon to celebrate that goal in front of the away fans would have been really nice. So it's always a shame when the goals come down the other end, but it doesn't really matter in the end.
The fans did get a bit of Macaulay Bon interaction though, didn't they, in the second half when Bon got substituted? He went off on the far side of the field and then obviously had to do the long walk around the pitch, which took him past that away end. And there was a bit of a surge down to the front to kind of give him high fives, and he indicated, someone asked for a selfie and he said, we better do it behind the net so we're not sort of impacting on the action, and he was posing for selfies and slapping hands, and they were singing "Sign Him Up," and that was a really nice moment. Yeah,
Hutchie, shall we talk about your imperceptible rating scale? Because there are some high scores. The boy, I mean, we have to obviously Edmondson. You may as well write down as a 9 every week at the moment, by the sound of it. But we also have to have a brief moment to appreciate Sonny Aluko, don't we? Because he's in terms of coming from, well, for me, the bottom of the pile of the summer signings. I put him 8th in my re-ranking list, but I think even there, I've been unkind to him because he's going to be incredibly important, isn't he? He's surprising everyone.
He's a football player with pedigree. We knew that when we signed him, when he came through the door. But he's such an intelligent player. That's what I think he's a Kieran McKenna player because I think he'll probably really enjoy the kind of the tactical interaction and instruction that comes from McKenna. From having spoken to Sonny a couple of times, he seems like that kind of guy. But he's classy. His touch is really good. His movement is good. he's not lightning quick. His attributes aren't like standout attributes, but they all come together to create a player that's really comfortable on the ball, is clever, can move well, can get in good positions, and it's just trust. You can trust him. I think he's a player that a manager would really trust to play probably any position to get a job done for you. He's one that I've enjoyed watching playing. That go back to that start against Newport when he clearly was not fit. And that wasn't a good example of what he could be. But he's turned himself into a really important player for this team, and I would imagine there's some level of discussion already about a new contract, given that he's only on a 1-year deal. I'm sure that's at the very least being discussed.
Part of the pass, the pass that led to the Macaulay Bonne goal, the pre-assist, if you want to call it that found Matt Penny was exquisite, sublime. That would grace the Premier League still. He's just. You could give him the ball in the tightest of areas anywhere on the pitch and he'll keep it. You look at his pass accuracy every game, it's up in the high 90s every match. He barely ever gives the ball away. And he's the one that just calms everything down. And he's a man in form at the moment, but it feels wrong highlighting individual players after that game because that was a team performance. I don't think Andy gave anyone below an 8 in terms of the outfield players, and rightly so, because that was a performance that was the sum of the whole of its parts, or whatever the phrase is. It's everyone had to be on it for you to have a win like that, and they were
greater than the sum of the
Thank
parts.
you.
Right? I think is the phrase you're looking for. And also, boys, I thought it's rare that you win 4-0 away. It's also rare that after you win 4-0 away, a certain unpopular manager gets the old heave ho, the Spanish archer, the elbow. But yeah, Mr. Evans. We don't want to see anyone lose their job, obviously, but I think sometimes you might make a little exception for someone as thoroughly pleasant as Mr. Evans. So he's gone as well. So all in all, it could have been the perfect Saturday for Ipswich Town. But I want to ask you, boys. Clearly, I'm very prone to hyperbole and getting excited and jumping up and down about things. And already this season, I've started the podcast proclaiming HMS Pistol League is afloat, and we scored 6 goals against Doncaster, etc. And obviously, already under Paul Cook this season, we've seen Town score 6 against Doncaster. Discount that because it's Doncaster; they're dreadful. But they have won 4-0 away at Portsmouth, and they have won 4-1 away at Wickham. So these are really, really good results. So is there a danger that we're getting too excited about a result like this? At the end of the day, it was 4-0 away at a team that are shit. They haven't won since October. So is there a risk that we're doing the Heath jumping, getting all excited about stuff? How does this compare in terms of those other results we've already seen this season under a different manager, Hutchie?
I would be a slight party pooper here and say that I would rank in an isolation. I would rank the Wickham win higher because of the opposition and the fact that they went behind and then came back to win that game in that manner. But the fact that this one it's just got life kind of ahead of it, if that makes sense. Like this is just an example of what's to come. So it kind of whets the appetite, which I think is why it's natural just to feel so positive about it. Like I think we all know that it was against Gillingham. We all know that Gillingham aren't very good, but I know it doesn't have to kind of sap the enjoyment from it. Just enjoy it for what it is. Clearly a bit of progress and some excitement for what's to come. But if you're asking me to rank the wins, I would probably still put the Wickham one higher, just because of the manner of how that came that night against the opposition that it came against. Doesn't mean I didn't have fun though.
Of course, we all had fun. Stewie, you referred to, I think, at the very start of the show as one of the most complete performances you've seen from Town in a while. Would you then rank that above what we've seen so far?
Yeah, I can see what Andy's saying. I think you have to take into account the level of the opposition and where they're at. Of course you do, but the Wickham game, the 4-1 at Wickham, they were under the cosh for quite a big spell in that first half, and you can argue that they showed character to kind of ride that out and then sort of clinically finish them off on the counter with the chances. But it was the control of this performance, and it was a team that, as Ross mentioned earlier, it's only a month ago that Charlton game was happening and they were getting booed off at a pitch and the team looked utterly devoid of confidence. To have got them from there to where they are in the space of 4 weeks and just the control of the game. McKenna sort of the improvement from Wickham to this one as well. Kieran McKenna had said, really spirited 1-0 win against Wickham. But straight away, he spoke immediately after the game. We want to control possession a bit more. There's areas that we can improve on, and then to see that happen in front of your eyes a game later, I think normally if you look at possession, if you look at passing stats, so often these days it's the two fullbacks who have the most touches of the ball, the most passes of the ball, and that was Morsey and Evans. They both had more than 100 passes in this game. And we've gone through some individuals with Edmondson and Luco, rightly so, and Norwood scoring again, Bond ending his goal drought. But I thought Morsey and Evans were outstanding in this game, both in very different ways. And to see those two suddenly playing, what you would describe as Paul Cook men, to suddenly sort of be playing like that, really pleased me. So I would, maybe it's kind of recency bias. But I think I would put this one right at the very top, yeah.
Rossi, you've got the deciding vote then. Hutchie says 4-1 at Wickham, more impressive. Stewie says this one was the one. You were pitch side for all of those. What do you make of it?
I'm going to have to go on to Hutchie's side because Gillingham were pretty rubbish. Wickham, Portsmouth, they were rubbish as well on those nights when we beat them. But it's a different game. All of them were different games going into it, really. Of course, we had a lot of time on the training ground. So, as I said, I was proven wrong. I went for a 1-0 win for Town in this game, and then we got that sexy football. We scored some good goals, but I feel it's there, isn't it? It's there, like the Wickham game, like the Pompey game, but I think still a long way to go. It's just I hope that kills you, don't it? Everyone's happy and happy that we won beautiful football, but it was Gillingham who are rubbish.
Yeah, I do get that, but then we're very quick to sort of say that when they sort of labour to a win against Crewe, that sort of downplays a win against Crewe because it's Crewe, and there have been times where it's not a given. I think we've still got this almost a little bit of subconscious arrogance about Ipswich Town being in League One and it's only them and it's this and it's that and should be beating them. You've got to earn the right to win every game, and that's what I liked about this performance. As nice as the sexy football was, they did earn the right to play as well, and I think McKenna's going to make sure that is the case. Like Andy said already, he's talking about Bolton and the new challenges for that, and so. Yeah, I'm not. I don't get too fixated on the opposition. You beat what's in front of you, and So, yeah, it's a good win.
It is a good win. Moving on from that, boys. Obviously, as it stands, Kieran McKenna's got the best record of any Ipswich Town manager of all time. 2 games, 2 wins, not even conceded a goal yet. Absolutely strolling this. But without kind of joking aside, he's played 2 games so far, Kieran McKenna. What for you, Hutchie, have we learnt so far about Kieran McKenna as Ipswich Town boss?
I think that he's the kind of manager that he says he is. It's adaptable. I think we're beginning to learn. We know what his principles are. Like Macaulay Bond spoke after the game about how him and Norwood kind of needed to set the tone for intensity, which is why they maybe only lasted 70 minutes of this game, because we learned that. So that's what he wants up the pitch. We learned that he wants to dominate possession. We learned that he's tactically flexible, but that's just what he said he was going to be at his introductory press conference. And I think the thing that I've learned is that he's just been able to put that on the pitch so quickly. That's the big thing that I've taken away from it.
Stewie, give us a takeaway out of McKenna.
It's been interesting to see a lot of Manchester United fans sharing the video of the third Ipswich goal, which was the pick of the bunch. If you watch the entire move, I think 8 different players in the team touch the ball. I don't think many of them touch it more than twice. The move starts from back to front. It goes from left to right. It's there's a lot of people going, Manchester United fans going, maybe McKenna wasn't part of the problem after all. And I've seen a few comments saying that actually there's a few hallmarks of some things that they'd seen at Manchester United, and maybe McKenna was behind some of the things that they'd seen at times there. So my big takeaway is that he's got a lovely, quiet, assured confidence about him, not in a brash way, but just a man that it would be very easy for somebody to have sort of slight doubts in your mind that this is your first big job, your first steps into management at the age of 35, managing players in some instances that are your age or slightly older. But he's just got, he was asked about, you're making this look easy, what a journalist asked him, and, how confident are you? Are you surprised how quickly you've taken to this? And he sort of, in a very respectful way, answered sort of no, because I've been building up to this for a long time. You got to remember, he's been working as a coach since the age of 22 years of age. I think he's always felt that this path was going to lead him to this point, and he just looks and feels ready. He's just got a very nice, quiet confidence about him, hasn't he, Andy?
He certainly has. Yeah, he's dealing with the bits of the job that he knows coaching. Right, he's a coach. We know that he's a coach, and it's been great to see that he's coaching the team and progressing players. But he also said in that part of the interview that Stu's referenced there about him adapting to the bits of the job that he hadn't done before, in terms of dealing with the press, dealing with executives and things like that, and seems to be doing that quite well as well. So yeah, I love his confidence. It's not brash, as Stu says. It's a man that knew he wanted to do this and knew he wanted to be a manager, and is doing it in his way. So yeah, it's enjoyable.
The caveat, of course, is this is very much the honeymoon period. He's come in, he's got off to a good start. They've got the first win sort of based on adrenaline of the new manager bounce. They've swept aside Gillingham in a bad state. Football management is not always sort of sunshine and rainbows the whole time, and it will be the first sort of real test for him is when inevitably there comes a sticky moment and questions gets raised, and then suddenly everyone will sort of jump on his age and his experience and all that sort of thing, and then we'll kind of see how this calm, meticulous demeanour kind of handles that first little bit of pressure cooker bit of football management, and when you're a bit worried that the Ashton and KOA above you are getting a bit twitchy and all that sort of stuff. That'll be interesting to see how he handles that. But from what we've seen so far, I think he's got the perfect temperament to kind of navigate any sort of choppy waters ahead, hopefully.
But just where you mentioned there, Stewie, the new manager bounce, that is something new. We've not seen that at Ipswich Town, have we, before, Rossi? I mean, traditionally, when managers come in, Town get worse. They have the opposite effect of the traditional new manager bounce.
Yeah, pretty much. It's not been well. Mick McCarthy got his first win, but then went on to then lose 6-0. Was it two back-to-back 6-0? Not back-to-back games, but Leicester and Crystal
Palace. One was 5, wasn't it? 5 at Palace and 6 to Leicester within those first few weeks. Yeah.
So yeah, those weren't great, but back-to-back wins, back-to-back clean sheets. He's doing everything right at the moment, and it was a big risk, appointing him, young manager, but he's shown his worth. And well, he was 32 years old when he got appointed assistant manager under Jose, so he's got something about him. If he's getting handpicked by Jose and all the managers at Man United who wanted him there, so I've been really impressed by him, and I'm happy that we got back-to-back wins. Paul Cook, one time he got back-to-back wins under his management, so McKenna's already beaten that record.
He's certainly bucking the trend. I think I'm right in saying, boys, if Town win at Bolton on Saturday, McKenna would be the first Ipswich Town manager ever to win their first 3 games in charge. I believe that's correct. Don't at me if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly sure that's correct. I also, there were some quotes that were kind of overlooked last week from Luke Wolfenden, the club put out about, it was more kind of focused around a new chance for Luke and that kind of stuff. But I thought the really interesting part of that was a bit where Luke was talking about picking McKenna's brains about how the best athletes in the world train and play. Because I think anyone can relate to that in any walk of life, be it your work, your own kind of athletic career, or whatever you're kind of doing, in any kind of walk of life. If you have someone that comes in who has worked at a higher level or worked with kind of high level people, there's a lot you can learn from that, and it does give you a lift. Anytime you kind of see the way the very best people operate, and you think, actually, this is tangible. I can see this, and I can take this on, and I can make this part of how I approach things. So I thought that was really interesting that Wolfenden was talking about that, and clearly that the whole squad. I mean, you've got a man who's been coaching Ronaldo, one of the greatest players of all time, famously fastidious and strict in how he approaches his life. He doesn't eat. There's that famous story, isn't there, about how Ronaldo turned up at the first kind of Man United group dinner. No one would touch the pudding that was laid out because Ronaldo doesn't eat pudding. And everyone was like, well, if he doesn't do it, I'm not going to do it. And you would do that, wouldn't you? That is how I think that can only be another fantastic string to add to the town bow. They now have the benefit of a man who knows how the world's best players operate, and you can tell Ipswich Town players how it's done. And you'd be a fool if you don't incorporate that in your professional life. If that's how you make your money and you want to be the very best player you can be, you'd be foolish not to learn from that. Rossi, you want to?
I'm always eating the pudding. I'm always eating the pudding. By the way, yeah. I'm not an athlete, but I'm always eating the pudding.
To be fair, mate, I have vivid memories of you jumping the queue at the Ipswich Town buffet in Germany. I think the unwritten rule there, if it's don't eat the pudding if Ronaldo's around at Man United, it's don't go up to the buffet before Paul Lambert. And you did, didn't you? And I think you had the last. Did you have the last soup? Did you take Paul Lambert's soup or something like that?
Yeah, but he didn't mind. We were their guests. Just breaking. Coming in and breaking the party up. Yeah,
amazing. All right, boys, let's move on. We can all agree it's been a very, very encouraging start for Kieran McKenna. Without getting too excited, and the man himself says we can't get ahead of ourselves just yet, but certainly you can't do more positive than win both your first two games, fail to concede a goal, and play some very, very sexy football. So we'll see what happens at Bolton this weekend. Next on the plan, boys, and for those of you listening and watching this, yes, there is a plan. We do have a rough plan for each show. It may not sound like it, but there is. I've written sexy stuff, ? And there's not really much of a sexy stuff update as far as I know. Obviously, aside from the Walton stuff we talked about last week, there's been no real new links. So what I'm going to do by way of sexy stuff, boys, is put a question to you. Stewie, we've talked last week about what Town need and where they need to fill and what could happen. But if Town do nothing, and I know they're not going to do nothing, but if Town do nothing this window, other than say keep Christian Walton and sign Macaulay Bonne full time, something like that, is that okay? If they can produce this with that squad they've already got,
I'm not mad keen on them doing loads of business this month because at some point the madness has to stop. You've had a summer transfer window where you've signed 19 and all the talk's been about requiring time to bed in players and gel and whatnot. What they have there should have been doing better, and Saturday is evidence of that. I think they'll want to make... It's a bit like if you've got money in your pocket, burning a hole in your pocket type thing. I think, there's money behind this clearly now. I think Ashton quite likes the thrill of the chase of a signing. And McKenna's already talked about, I think there's some stuff that's been going on for a couple of months before he's even arrived. And Ashton, I think when he did his podcast with us days after the summer transfer windows, sort of said we're already sort of starting work on January. So there will be a temptation to kind of follow through on stuff like that, but that doesn't necessarily mean you should do or you have to, because big squads can cause problems for managers. I think sometimes a lot of a manager's time goes into the players that are not playing. You look at the squad at the weekend, and I think McKenna's already referenced this. He sort of said that there's some good players that didn't even make the bench. Scott Fraser dropped out of the squad. Bersant Selina, fit again, didn't make the squad. And you could go through a list of others as well. So sometimes adding to it can create more problems than solutions. They have to be significant upgrades on what you've got, and I don't know if January is necessarily the time that you can do that. But we'll see what happens.
I'd say as well that there's a manager there now that if I was, I agree with you about Mark Ashton. By the way, I think there's clearly something he enjoys about the transfer market, and you know what, I'd be exactly the same. That would be something I'd really enjoy if I, in the unlikely event I ever found myself in that position. But he's got a coach now who there's every reason to think that there's a coach that can improve the players that they've already got. And I don't know the last time when you would say the last time that was the case at Ipswich. Certainly not the previous two managers, I wouldn't say. Or even the two before that, because I think we've heard enough from kind of Mick McCarthy's players to suggest that he didn't improve them. He maybe toughened them and systemized them, but wouldn't improve them as players. There's a coach there who can improve football players. They've invested a fair amount in the squad that's there right now. And if I was Mark Ashton, Mike O'Leary, and the board, I would be quite enthused by the prospect of seeing what he can do with them over the next few months. I do think there are, as well as Matt Penny played at the weekend, he's kind of a one-man band, assuming that Hayden Coulson isn't available. Yeah, you could potentially give someone like Kyle Edwards a go in that role. But that would be an area I may be looking at a little bit still. But in terms of the rest of the squad, I'd love to see how he can make these players better before the summer. That would be what I'd be hoping to see.
Sometimes change, the answer can't always be external, can it? The answer can't always be change. That, in football, it's always change the manager, change the players. At some point, it has to be about, like you said, getting more from what you've got and improving people within the building. That's, there are obvious times where things need to change and freshen up, but this doesn't feel like that moment for me now. Look at it again in the summer. There's still a long, we're all getting excited about closing the gap, and it's still 8 points with having played more games than teams, a lot of the teams above them. There's still a lot of work to do this season. Do you really want to be going on an all-out sort of gamble for short-term improvement now, or is that money better? Is it better just to call your jets and see what happens over these next few months, and then really look at it in the summer?
Actually, just on a point of order, Stu there made reference to having money burning a hole in your pocket. If you've got money burning a hole in your pocket, do you go trainers or do you go kits?
Kits, probably. I think the way that I shop for these items, I can get more for my money in the kit realm. Would probably more bang for buck in the kit realm rather than trainer. Trainers is kind of the marquee signing, the Bersant Salina, Sam Morsey on deadline day, get it done. Whereas if I'm building a squad, I'm building them out of kits.
I love the way your little face lights up whenever we mention the word kit.
Just anything other than the actual football. I'm here. Bits around the edge. I don't even like football. I just love the stuff around the edges of it. I love the kits and boots.
Before we move on, this has reminded me. Thoughts on Arsenal's kit in the cup yesterday, Andy, and specifically the squad numbers that sort of blended in. Did you see that?
Mate, yeah. I have a fundamental problem with squad numbers away from league competition. Anyway, they become a bit ropey, some of them, because they're allowed to do their own style of numbers, aren't they? That wasn't the worst crime of the weekend. I don't know if any of you watched Swindon and Man City on Friday night, but Man City wore one of those badgeless ones, those really bad Puma ones that are just had, I think it just said Man City on it.
They're so
bad. They're awful. It's the first time I've watched a game with anybody wearing. I think I saw AC Milan wear one, actually. previously, but it's the first time I've watched an English team wear one. They're horrific.
They
And
remind me of when you go on holiday as a kid to Spain, and your mum and dad would get you one off some sort of dodgy market store. Oh, thanks, Dad. Yeah.
I think Swindon players were refusing to swap shirts with the Man City players because they were that bad. Just no, I don't want your shirt. I don't want your shirt, Bernardo Silva. Keep it. It's dreadful.
And also, just by way of keeping the theme going, Hutchie, what's your kit of the day just over your shoulder?
You know the drill. You tell me.
Well, Stewie, go on. I mean, from my point of view, it looks like a Denver Broncos American football shirt, but
it's not.
Long sleeved
Nacho 12.
It's not a goalkeeper. It's not a goalkeeper shirt. It's just a long sleeve one. There are some clues on there.
Is it international kit?
No.
It's got to be Spanish, isn't it? Spanish?
Yep. You can. There's a shirt patch on there on the left sleeve that should tell you if you know your kits. There's
Is that a Red Bull logo? I can't see.
No.
Red team.
This is great audio.
Say what you see. Paint a picture.
Sporting Dion.
So essentially, listeners, it's a long sleeve orange top with the number 12 on the back and the name Nacho, and there's stuff on the sleeves which I can't quite make out. I've got absolutely no idea. Obviously, a Spanish top. Any guesses, boys, before Hutchie puts us out of our considerable misery?
No, sorry.
Nacho Manuel. Is it Nacho Manuel's kit?
It's not him.
No.
It's a completely unknown player. Actually, I think he's Uruguayan. Did absolutely nothing. The clue that should give it away is on the little black collar there. There's a black collar on it. There's a little logo, and if it was a bit closer and you'd be able to see, I hope you'd get it. It's got a bat on it. If I told you it had a bat, there was a bat on it. Who would that help you?
Nope.
Valencia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we see the front of it, Hutchie? Now we've.
Yeah.
Is it within reach?
I'll have to get up, but I will do that. Keep talking.
Sorry about that. So Rossi, while Hutchie does that, if Town do nothing this transfer window, is that? We'll wait for Hutchie now to show the front. Here we go.
So there's your bat.
There's the bat. I don't like that at all.
It's not about liking it. I don't particularly like it.
Badges should not be in the middle of kits. I feel strongly about that.
Well, you need to write to Kappa because they do that a lot. So
not that strongly.
What's the significance of the bat?
I don't know.
Okay.
Again, ask Valencia.
All right then, Rossi. So let's just finish this just sexy stuff chat. Now we've talked about shirts and whatnot. If Town do nothing this transfer window, don't add anyone at all, are you happy with that?
If we can keep hold of Walton and Bon, if they don't get recalled, then I think, yes, I am a little bit, but I still think we need that left sided sorted. But I think for the rest of the squad, I'm happy to go with the bands to go for the rest of the season. But yeah, we'll see. We don't want a whole new rip up the whole squad, bring Kieran McKenna's own, touch to it. Let Kieran McKenna improve these players, and we'll see what happens. But hopefully there is some business there because they'll keep us busy doing, videos and articles and stuff.
Regardless of what actually happens, there'll be plenty of rumours and stuff, won't there, to keep us going and stuff the boys will dredge up, I'm sure. Can we read anything into the fact that Caden Jackson suddenly returned at the weekend and was on the bench? Do you think he is in any way in the plans, or is it kind of putting him in the shop window sort of thing, boys?
I would say that is a good. That maybe highlights how much intensity Kieran McKenna wants from his strikers. The first change at the weekend was a double change, Jackson and Piggott on for Bon and Norwood for the final 20 minutes. I think Bon and Norwood left every kind of ounce on the pitch there, and I think maybe that was just their presence on the bench. Maybe just showed that was a change he always considered making. Potentially, I think he's got a real job to do to push himself ahead of particularly the two that started. But he does have he does have assets that others don't in terms of some lightning pace that he has. I think he's learned to use it a little bit better over the last couple of years.
I think Caden Jackson is the player that he's referring to most when he said there are players here that we are happy with, but they might be wanting a conversation with us about not getting enough minutes and their opportunities elsewhere. I think he fits that sort of high intensity front player. Would be quite happy to use him now and again off the bench. I'm not sure that Bursant Selena is that sort of all action type player. His best opportunity is, again, McKenna's reference. We've got to find the most effective way to use Bursant Selena. Well aware of his talents, but I guess his position would be that sort of Sonny Aluko role at the moment as the number 10. But ultimately, I think Caden Jackson's not going to be happy with sort of bits and pieces off the bench here and now. He's not played a lot of football for quite a long time. So we're talking about the January transfer window. I think ultimately it will be letting people move on who want to move on, and then maybe replacing them sort of appropriately, I would suggest.
Okay. All right.
Also, sorry, before we move on from that, you're talking about sort of changing the front players with 20 minutes to go, and the front players giving everything and then swapping them. To be fair, that is exactly what Paul Cook said he wanted to do all the time. His football was about, I want to change the 2 or 3 attacking players with 20 minutes to go, and he'll argue that circumstances meant he never got to do that because Kane Vincent-Young would go off injured, but Wes Burns would go off injured, and defenders. He kept having. There was a stage where he kept having to change both fullbacks at half time, didn't he? For reasons outside of his control. So I'm sure managers always look in on things with a bit of a wry smile, sort of thinking that the wheel has been reinvented and and he'll probably think, well, actually, it's not a million miles off what I wanted at times. I know we've talked about some different in-game adaptability and subtle tweaks that maybe we didn't see under Paul Cook, but that is what also a fundamental principle of what he wanted his front players to give absolutely everything and then freshen them up.
And that is the perfect segue, Stewie, as a professional that you are, to talk about certain Mr. Cook. But by way of ending sexy stuff, just a reminder to support our sponsor Manscaped by using the code KOA at manscaped.com for 20% off and free delivery. Make yourself look sexy with all their various trimmers and cologne and underwear and that kind of stuff. Paul Cook, some people may find him sexy by way of a segue. But boys, it's a bit ropey. Last week when we had a little insight into the nerve centre in Hutch Towers, full now as we know of kits, trainers, and other assorted things. Mr. Cook was on the TV, and we speculated at the time that we'd probably end up picking that up because it would probably be interesting, and indeed it was. Paul Cook talking for the first time about his exit from Ipswich Town. Didn't really say anything you probably wouldn't really have expected. Clearly said that he thought it was way too soon to get rid of him. I guess the most interesting thing for me anyway was the bit about how he would have left in the summer if he'd have been told that he had to have success straight away. And just by way of finishing the show this week, it seems apt that we reflect on that. So Hutchie, you were the man who brought it to our attention. What did you make of Mr. Cook's chat, his words?
I think the first thing would be just to say that I think it's pretty clear that this is a first move to get himself back into work. I think there's a clear desire there. But in terms of the point you've just raised there, there's success and then there's success, right? I don't think anyone was asking Ipswich Town to be top of league. He wasn't sacked because he wasn't top of the league. I think the job for him came to an end because they were 10th, still 11th, I think, actually, when he was fired. It wasn't that they weren't romping the league. It's that they had lost touch with the playoffs and were trending downwards. So look, the point about instant success is a valid discussion point from him. It's like what was the expectation? He's also talked about how making so many changes to the squad was a hindrance. That's a change that he obviously instigated. But in terms of the success side of things, if they'd been 6th or 7th, even 8th, with kind of but in touch, I don't think that change would have happened when it.
Do you think
when it did.
even if they'd beaten Arsenal under 21s and Barrow in that week, he could
Quite
still
possibly.
be manager of Ipswich Town? You know, that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, wasn't it? I mean, he's certainly being. A lot of what he says is you can garner sympathy and it is valid, but he's being a little selective in terms of this. You know, for a very long time he was wanting just to sweep the end of last season under the rug, as if that had absolutely nothing to do with him. We've talked about Kieran McKenna being a manager who's hopefully going to get the best out of players and adapt and work out a way to make them functional. He didn't do that. He took over a team that was 7th and just outside of the playoffs and had won 3 games in a row, and they fell away disastrously, didn't they? And then it was his decision to be demolition man, and is almost making it sound like that wasn't, you know, that was beyond his control. So he's being a little selective, and as is his want, he's trying to sort of use the national platform to sell himself appropriately for the next job, but. Maybe being a little selective with some of the things that he's talking about.
Yeah, there's a job at Gillingham now, boys. Maybe.
That could not be a different job to the Ipswich job right now. Money is tight at Gillingham. Be a brave man that goes in there, I think.
Yeah, I can't see it. The other interesting thing, I guess, from his comments were kind of perhaps hinting at maybe some friction with Ashton, having to work with a performance team that he hadn't brought in. Was that the way you read it, boys?
Yeah, there was a second very similar interview that he did with it. It was just some passing comments on a Chesterfield podcast that he did. He clearly did it way before Christmas as well. It was before the Sky interview that discussed that almost the exact same things. But I think it's just a manager with his own ideas, and I don't necessarily like the word old school, because I wouldn't say Paul Cook was an old school manager, but it's maybe just an example of him not being the right fit for what is here now, which I would describe as quite an attempt at a modern structure at Ipswich, and that's something Paul Cook just wasn't used to, and it for whatever reason the two didn't click together. That's how I'd view that one.
Yeah, I think if you lined up Mark Ashton's vision of how a football club should be, this is pretty much spot on now, isn't it, in terms of the kind of coach that he's got, the manager he's got, and the way he fits into the Ashton structure, data dashboards and performance teams and that kind of stuff. I think now this would be a big tick, whereas maybe before Cook was probably perhaps the one kind of bit of friction in that whole seamless machine. Stewie, you going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, they're putting the recruitment room side of things to one side. The performance team, the fitness side of things, I think Paul Cook has made it pretty clear now that he didn't think the players were fit enough to play his intense brand of football. We know that the fullbacks had to be ultra fit, and just in general, the team. He's a manager that used to do pre-season running along beaches and going to local boxing gyms, and I think a lot of that got stopped by Andy Rolls and the performance team there now, and he would argue that he wasn't able to get the players to the level of fitness that he required. And then we've heard from people like Luke Wolfenden to say that a lot of the fitness work has been kind of football based. So instead of just running for the sake of running, it's been, they've described it as more enjoyable sessions so far. So we'll know. This is the thing. We as outsiders never know what goes on a training pitch, and you can only ever look at the number of injuries that people have got at any time, and people put 2 and 2 together and probably quite often come up with 5. We're all guilty of that. But I think that would be Paul Cook's argument ultimately, that he wasn't able to get the players as fit as he would like.
Rossi, did you take anything away from the Paul Cook comments other than we've already discussed?
It was just time. It timed all right, because it was like a month, wasn't it, to the day that he got sacked. So the I don't know if it's the right phrase to use. We can cut this out. The gagging order of him talking. I don't know, because I'm sure they've got maybe in their contracts you can't do any media for a month, and then pretty much to the day he went on to Sky Sports. The biggest media platform for sport, really, for him to go out and talk about his tenure at the club. And I think a lot of fans were engaged by that, and a lot of talking was made.
That's obviously pure speculation. We don't know if that existed, but yes, the timing is convenient. Rossi, by way of ending the pod, the Tractor Girls were back in action, weren't they, yesterday? They won again, didn't they? I mean, I can't say as I followed it. Oh, they didn't. Oh, I saw they 1-0 up. What happened?
Have you just assumed they always win?
I've got to be honest. Yeah, I do.
Because they normally do, don't they?
Ipswich Town women play. Ipswich Town women win, and I saw they were 1-0 up, so I assumed that would be the way the game ended with a victory. But no. So who were they playing, and what happened, Rossi?
They are playing Portsmouth, a good side, and it was a 1-1 draw. Natasha Thomas scored her 11th goal of the season to open the scoring, but then in the second half, Pompey got the equaliser. It was just one of those games where they dominated, but didn't take their chances, didn't test the keeper enough, and Pompey overall maybe deserved the point. So it's another point dropped, but another point earned as well, really. So can't win them all.
Whereabouts are the girls in the league now then? They're still top.
Top of the league. Southampton's game, who are our rivals, their game got postponed because of weather and all that jazz. So don't know why I brought that out.
What was the other jazz? Can we just confirm the weather and
all the other jazz?
Is there any other jazz, or was it just the weather?
Just the weather.
Just the weather.
Just the weather. But no, a point earned, and they move on to next weekend. But Natasha Thomas doing what she does best, scores goals.
Where can we expect a Tractor Girls talk this week, Rossi? Is it going to be one?
Yeah, hopefully on Tuesday. Blue Wilson's just talking to her contacts about getting a guest on. So stay tuned for that.
Super. Look out for that later this week. Boys, we've done just about an hour, which is usually a good length of podcast for us. Is there anything else you wish to discuss before we take our leave and start the working week?
No other business.
No other business.
I have some other business. Rossi, I don't know if you listened to this or watched it, but last week's show we finished with New Year wishes, and I finished with my wish for each of you boys. And my wish for you was to pass your bloody driving test. And last we spoke about this, my friend, you said your test was in November. So can you bring us and the listeners / viewers up to speed with what is the latest on Rossi's driving school?
February is hopefully the month I get it done, because I was going to have it in November, but sadly I had to go to a funeral. And so I did get asked by a few people though in Gillingham. I don't know his relation to you, Andy, but Colin did ask me when he was in the stand. Good old Colin, who's a listener. Hello, Colin, if you're listening. He did ask me, how are you getting on with driving? Did you get it done? I went, no, my friend. But hopefully this is the year that Ross Halls will be driving on those roads. And I'll be hopefully driving the lads to an away game. So.
Oh, my God. I'm not sure about that, boys.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds like a kind of tagline to a film, isn't it? This is the year that Ross Halls is on the roads. It could be like some kind of horror thriller. I did also just hear someone say I need a wee. So
that was my 3-year-old daughter came running. That's yeah. And the big thumping of all four arms and legs coming up the stairs. I need a way.
That seems a good time to end.
Yeah, it's not my problem. Her mother is here. So
superb. All right, well, thanks for listening this week, friends, listeners, viewers, whatever. We should also just mention very, very briefly that last week, the last show, we broke 1 million all-time listens, which is a fairly tremendous and staggering number. So if you are, and clearly you are, if you're listening to this, one of those listeners, thank you very much for listening, for watching, for getting involved with the pod. It's tremendous. We do enjoy making it, and it's great that so many people listen to it. On that note, please follow us across all social medias, Kings of Anglia on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. I know the YouTube subscribers are going up nicely, Rossi. Also leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, because that helps even more people discover us via the iTunes charts, visibility-wise. And that's it. So your happy Monday is underway. Ipswich Town won spectacularly at the weekend, which sets us up nicely for a good week. We'll be back later on this week, hopefully with some sexy stuff to chuck around. But until then, have a great start to the week, and we'll see you then.